sometimes in our devotions, we can do it so much that we forget why we're doing it. Okay, so in this case, fasting is one of those instances. Why do we fast? What's the purpose? Our first reading begins with really a critique of the way that the Israelites were fasting. They were fasting as a way of manipulating God, which I think is something that can kind of creep into us as well. If I want something from God, then I'll fast and then he'll give it to me. Sometimes I see it with devotions and novenas. If you pray this prayer every day for 9 days, God will grant your request. Manipulation. It's that type of mentality. But God obviously is a God that cannot be manipulated. Fasting was always for the purpose of enhancing the relationship. The Hebrew people, the Israelites, the purpose for fasting really contrary to the pagans. The pagans fasted as well. And again, they did so like very much also their prayers. They did so as a way of trying to control God to give them what they wanted. That's how the pagans did it. So even Jesus, we heard in the gospel reading for Ash Wednesday, I didn't really preach on it, but Jesus says when you pray, do not pray like what the pagans do. They think if they say many words that God will hear them. Okay, that type of mentality that the more that you say something, the more you babble on in prayer, the more likely then that God will give you what you want. But the fasting was about what? It was about emptying, really in a physical way, emptying our fill, our desire, for the things of this world, so that our inner rooms can be empty for what? So that God can easily then enter into the inner chambers of our heart. That's why the Israelites fast, and that's why we fast. We give up something to allow God the space without any distractions on our part, without any loves for any other thing, where our love can solely be towards God, where we come to God and say, God, in our hunger, we ask you to fill our need. Again, fasting to enhance the relationship. And so when we look at the Gospels, John's disciples, John the Baptist, as well as the Pharisees, they look at Jesus, they look at his followers, and they scratch their heads. Again, because they lost the purpose of fasting. Why aren't your disciples, Jesus? Why aren't you fasting? Well, the answer is quite simple. If fasting and the purpose of fasting was allowing God to enter into the chambers of our life, and if the disciples are literally sitting next to the Son of God and having their fill right there, then what is the need to fast? They are now constantly being filled. They have set aside all their things and followed Jesus. As we hear in the calling stories of Peter and Andrew and James and John, they left their fishing boats behind. They left their father behind to go and follow Jesus. They have emptied themselves to allow Jesus to enter into that chamber of their hearts. And so again, why fast? Just like when you're in heaven, you're not fasting in heaven. God is filling you right there. And so that's the message. It's almost an implicit statement, a very subtle statement of the divinity of Jesus. The bridegroom is here. And so when the bridegroom comes, what is it? It's a feast. God is filling us right now. So again, a very common image of a wedding feast, a very heavily scriptural reference. That when God's in our presence, it's a wedding celebration. God is filling those long desires of our heart. But now in the season of Lent, again, as a way of preparing for the Triduum, for the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and for the coming of the Holy Spirit, we fast now to allow all of our loves of this world to be emptied out and let God to fill in that need. May God bless you.